Paris convenes the coalition of the willing today. France, Britain, Germany and a dozen allies united in backing Ukraine. But as Washington pressures Kyiv to accept a rushed peace deal seen by many as bending to Moscow's demands, Europe steps into a widening transatlantic gap. Is this coalition a true strategic force or a stopgap in America's retreat? While Trump calls Europe weak and decaying, as well as urging Ukraine to play ball, Kyiv and its European partners push a counterplan rooted in security, sovereignty and reconstruction. With Russia and China deepening ties in Beijing, the question isn't just who supports Ukraine, but who will shape the post-war world. Welcome to Think Tank.
Our world is becoming unhinged.
The Guardian has reported that the new U.S. national security strategy marks a historic rupture in transatlantic relations, openly framing the European Union as an ideological target. This shift formalizes anxieties, with nearly half of Europeans viewing the current U.S. administration as a hostile force. Critically, the doctrine threatens direct meddling to empower far-right parties, aiming to undermine liberal democracy and restore lost national sovereignties. Analysts now classify Washington not as an ally, but as a willing adversary to the continent. This pressure coincides with the U.S. push for an unfavorable peace in Ukraine to normalize relations with Russia. European leaders currently mobilized must urgently seek independent security solutions and financial stability for Kyiv.
I think we may have a very good outcome. He's somebody that
And according to the Daily Mail, the diplomatic track for Ukraine intensifies as Kyiv sends Donald Trump a proposal outlining possible territorial concessions. German Chancellor Merz confirmed this breakthrough, yet stressed that the final decision rests solely with the Ukrainian people. This follows reports of strong words exchanged as Trump pressed European leaders for a swift, realistic settlement involving land cessation. Kyiv is maneuvering to steer the critical negotiations and avoid being forced into an unacceptable peace. The comprehensive peace framework includes securing U.S. security guarantees, utilizing frozen Russian assets, and fast-tracking Ukraine into the EU. This pressure highlights the urgent need for an independent, cohesive European security strategy.
Wir stehen mit langem Atem auf der Seite der Ukraine, die gemeinsamen Ziele zu erreichen.
As Paris hosts a digital summit of Ukraine's centrist allies, Kyiv counters U.S. peace demands, for Trump pressures for holiday concessions, and Beijing arms Moscow for the world after the war.
In the heart of Paris, Europe's leaders convene, not in ballrooms, but in encrypted video windows. Thursday, December 11th, the Coalition of the Willing meets again. Summoned by France, co-led with Britain and Germany. The mission? To shore up support for Ukraine as Washington grows impatient. Behind closed digital doors, Kyiv delivers a counter-draft to Washington's contested peace framework, rejecting territorial surrender while proposing phased security guarantees tied to NATO integration. Simultaneously, U.S. officials depart Ukraine after reviewing post-war reconstruction blueprints, signaling that aid may hinge on political concessions. Yet even as Europe scrambles to present a united front from Paris, Beijing unveils next-gen drones at a defense expo co-hosted with Russian engineers, prove that while West debates terms of peace, its rivals are already engineering the architecture of the next order. But across the Atlantic, Donald Trump delivers an ultimatum. We don't want to waste our time. He's pushing a Christmas deadline for peace. A deal Kyiv and allies fear concedes Ukrainian sovereignty to Moscow. Meanwhile, Zelensky sends Washington a counter-proposal and questions why elections are being used as leverage, while Europe coordinates virtually. Beijing and Moscow solidifying a new axis through drills, energy deals, and anti-Western diplomacy. This is not just a war in Ukraine, it is a global realignment. The coalition now unites over a dozen nations, but unity is fragile, defense gaps persist, security guarantees remain non-binding. Yet for Kyiv, this coalition may be its last reliable lifeline. Two capitals, two visions. Washington demands quick compromises. Paris insists on sovereignty and strategy. As Trump questions Europe's strength, its leaders respond. What we see is resolve. The coalition of the willing may be willing, but in a world of shifting empires, willingness alone will not win the peace.
To talk to us more about this, we're joined from Kyiv by Mr. Oleksiy Milonek, a former Deputy Defense Minister in Ukraine, and from Washington, Mr. Denis Jaffe, a strategic affairs expert. Thank you both for joining me here on Think Tank.
Thank you for having me.
Let's start off with you, Mr. Milonek. Can the coalition's non-NATO security pledges somehow effectively deter a future Russian invasion, or are they some sort of diplomatic assurances that lack real teeth when it comes to Russia?
Well, for the moment, we can hardly talk about the capabilities of the coalition of the willing. I mean, military capabilities, economic capabilities, but there is at least a political will, and this is probably the first step. If there is a will, there is a way. Europe can partly substitute American support in the sense of money, because since Donald Trump became a president of the United States, this country does not provide any financial support for Ukraine or material support for free. And Europe has been able to buy weapons from the United States under the so-called Pearl program and provide these weapons for Ukraine. But again, lacking defense industrial capabilities and lacking nuclear shield or some essential things like air power, intelligence, I think Europe has to mobilize more resources to take a leading role.
Okay, Mr. Jaffe, let's get your take here. Now, President Trump says that Europe is a weak and decaying continent. But with the US sidelining NATO right now and pushing a Moscow-friendly peace deal, who's really undermining the Western unity here, in your opinion?
Graham, good to be with you, Merhaba, and to have the opportunity to discuss these issues. European leaders need to be more strategic. They need to be smarter with respect to regaining standing in the world and with the United States. Mm-hmm. President Trump is walking all over them. You know, there are three ways to try to get someone to do something. There's whacking them over the head with a stick, there's offering them a carrot, dangling it in front of them, or is offering them sugar, hoping that they might do something in return for the sweetness. Mm-hmm. What Europe has been doing is applying only sweetness with Donald Trump, and it is backfiring. He calls them a decaying continent. He calls Africa, forgive me, shithole countries. The United States is not a reliable ally in the world with political influence. What will happen if China attacks Taiwan? What will happen if Russia goes further into Ukraine or into other countries? The United States is not expected to be a reliable ally. So there's an opportunity in Europe with respect to finding who is it that is on their side, on Ukraine's side, who has influence on Donald Trump. They've failed to do that.
Well, if I could just follow up there, do you think that possibly President Trump wants to get this deal done and over with because there is a real fear when it comes to Russia, and that's why he is sort of pushing the Europeans and calling them weak and decaying?
No, I don't think he cares about peace per se. I think he wants the Nobel Peace Prize. If he can muscle them, ironically, in terms of trying to achieve peace, into a deal with Ukraine and Russia, then there's the semblance, at least for the time being, there would be of peace. But he is all complimentary when it's in his personal financial interests or in his political interest with respect to his status. He can be greeted and honored and welcomed to Great Britain with the King of England. But when it comes time for Europe to be able to count on President Trump in the United States of America, he's not there. So he turns our back on Europe, and they are kissing his behind instead of being strategically smart.
Okay, Mr. Belenek, can we ask you here about this as well? Do you agree there with Mr. Jeffy about the idea that Trump has the ability to push around the Europeans because they have basically rolled over?
Yes, he is definitely trying to isolate Europeans and to make just bilateral deal with Russia and forcing Ukraine to accept whatever Mr. Witkoff agrees with Vladimir Putin. Mr. Witkoff and his Trump's son-of-law, Mr. Kosher. But it's a strange situation because at one moment he tries to isolate Europe and all these rhetorics, critics towards Europe, and on the other hand, he wants Europe to be like part of the deal and pay for almost all of his initiatives. And I don't think that the Europeans are ready to accept such unfavorable deal for Europe.
Which kind of brings on the next idea here, sir. I mean, obviously, Europe, as well as Ukraine, needs weapons, and in order to achieve, some sort of victory, eventual peace, and so forth. Given what's happening right now, what red lines are absolutely non-negotiable for the Ukrainians when it comes to sovereignty and territorial integrity?
Okay, about weapons and the red lines. Ukraine has already suffered 7 months without any weapons provided by the United States back in 22-23, when, again, because of Trump, who blocked American support for Ukraine for 7 months, as I said. But Ukraine survived with bigger losses that it could be. And nowadays, the United States needs Ukraine to buy weapon itself or through the European or by the European money, because it's beneficial for the United States defense industry. As for the red lines, there are very clear red lines being announced by Ukrainian leadership. First is the territory. And it's not only because Ukrainian legislation, Ukrainian constitution, because these kind of concessions are not accepted by the Ukrainians. We have public opinion polls which tell us that more than 60% or percent Ukrainians do not accept any concessions regarding Ukrainian Western foreign territories for peace. And Ukraine been known for very strong and active civil society. And this is the argument for any president of Ukraine, no matter Zelensky or maybe another leader if elections take place. He simply cannot afford to sign such a deal because he knows that he will be met with mass protest back in Ukraine. So it will not be acceptable by Ukraine. And any restrictions on Ukraine's sovereignty, like number of troops or Ukraine's freedom to join NATO or the European Union, should not be also acceptable.
Okay, Mr. Jeffrey, now, is the Paris meeting some sort of pivot towards a European strategic autonomy, or just merely a temporary vacuum created by America's conditional commitments to the Europeans?
We don't know yet. It gives Europe the opportunity to reassert some leverage, influence, some standing in the world with the United States. But if it depends whether they apply same old, same old. President Trump was invited to the residence to visit with the King of England, with the royalty there twice, with British monarchy, and he loves that. But what does Europe and what does Great Britain get in return? It would be much smarter for them to figure out and identify and float as a carrot in front of Trump. This is what can happen to and for Donald Trump if he is a reliable ally for them. What businesses in Europe have influence on Donald Trump? I'm not a fan of using private industry to influence public officials, but frankly, we're desperate here to try to figure out what can influence Trump. So whether it is business leaders, whether it is religious leaders, whether it is the Pope, they are kissing up to Trump and complimenting him and praising him and just showering compliments upon him, and then they don't get anything in return. We look at deadlines and what will happen and ultimatums as you referenced. Donald Trump doesn't really use ultimatums. He uses the guise of ultimatums. Deadlines and dates, targets with Donald Trump are movable objects. There's this famous reference in the United States to, in 2 weeks, if they don't do X, there's going to be trouble. And 2 weeks come, whether it's with respect to Hamas or whether it's with respect to Putin or Venezuela, 2 weeks come and go and nothing happens. There's a nickname for Trump in the United States, which is Taco. Trump always chickens out. And so when they are meeting, what they need to do is identify what is it that they could do that would hold leverage to influence, to change behavior of Donald Trump. Is it rewarding him with something with respect to his status and standing in the world? Is it punishing the United States? Is it isolating the United States? Is it businesses who are landing, offering business deals to create new jobs in the United States? What is it? I don't have those answers, but the questions are key, and certainly European leaders have been kissing up to Trump without getting anything in return, really.
Okay, Mr. Mednick, you heard Mr. Jeffrey there talking about, these unreal ultimatums that Trump always sets out and never actually follows through. One of those ultimatums is with Trump pushing for a Christmas peace deadline that could possibly, if it does happen, risk legitimizing the Russian gains. Can Europe's coalitions the willing offer Kiev real security or just diplomatic comfort, or do you believe that this is one of those ultimatums that will come and go as usual?
Most probably, yes. Ukraine has been under pressure for a number of times with the mineral deal, with this infamous meeting in the Oval Office back in February this year. And I think that Ukrainian leaders and Volodymyr Zelensky in particular, they have acquired some skills how to communicate with Trump. It's better to say yes, but. So don't ever say no. Say yes and wait, because as our American guest said, there are some very unpleasant nicknames well deserved by Donald Trump. So nobody trusts anymore his promises or his ultimatums. And of course, we have to be careful just to not make him upset too much. So that's my vision. And as for the security guarantees, it's important to make the first step, to make political decision. But even the Article 5 of the Washington Treaty, which for today is the strongest what allies can get, kind of security guarantees. But if you read carefully, it's an empty words, if not supported by careful planning by resources. So, but let's start with this political decision. And we have pretty clear vision about what the reliable security guarantees are. We have very dramatic experience with the Budapest Memorandum back in 1994. Ukraine gave up its nuclear weapons and got assurances in return from countries, including Russia. So it didn't work. So now we see the core of the security guarantees is the strong Ukrainian defense capabilities. And we have this in common with our European partners. So that's the key element, plus defense industry and plus political guarantees provided by international partners.
Okay, Mr. Jevy, now the House just passed a bill to bolster European defense. Does this somehow signal a bipartisan pushback against Trump's transactional retreat from Ukraine?
It does. There are limits to it. But right now, what's happening in the United States politically is the Republican Party is running scared. The elections in November produced astounding victories for the Democratic Party in many states and municipalities around the country. And Republicans in the House of Representatives in particular, and at the federal level, for the first time in either President Trump's first term in office or now in his second term, are showing the willingness to buck him. And it's not because of courage, it's because of their own hide. They are up for re-election. The House is currently under Republican control by just a few seats, and they could very, very easily lose the majority in the House of Representatives come November. And so Republicans are, at least for now, willing to show the appearance of independence and breaking from Trump. And that is good for democracy and good for our country.
Okay, Mr. Melinek, now you spoke a little earlier about the idea of yes, but. Now, Zelensky did the exact same that you just said. He sent to Washington a revised peace plan rejecting the territorial concessions. Does Europe now hold Ukraine's only credible lifeline? And do you think that this yes, but thing may work with Trump?
It has worked since probably February, when I mentioned this infamous meeting when President Zelensky in all cabinets tried to use arguments saying no and trying again to explain why no, but we saw that it didn't work. So it has worked since then with many other instances, like I mentioned also the mineral deal, because the first draft that Americans presented to Ukraine was absolutely unacceptable. And finally, we got to kind of mutually beneficial document. So now we don't know the details of the Ukrainian revised proposal sent back to Washington, D.C., but definitely there is something in the same framework like yes, but. So not rejecting completely the proposal, but trying to get as much as possible, which is actually the art of diplomacy.
Okay, Mr. Jeffrey, now Trump has also threatened to skip the weekend talks unless Europe comes back with some sort of answer. Is this considered, in your opinion, a form of diplomacy, or is it just one of those ultimatum politics that never follows through eventually?
Well, it can be effective diplomacy if Europe sticks together, if they stay together, and if they continue advancing their position with respect to the United States to try to get President Trump to acquiesce or to agree. I shouldn't say acquiesce because then that signals the wrong thing to Mr. Trump. But yes, there is that opportunity, and I agree with my colleague from Ukraine that yes, but is a smart strategy. It's a good tactic. It works because it shows cooperation, it shows the potential for continued dialogue and results, but it also allows that one party to buy time. And I'm hopeful that Europe will continue to be assertive on these issues with respect to Ukraine and other issues to try to get the United States to come to the table and be part of supporting democracies around the world and not strongmen and autocrats.
Okay, Ms. Melanik, if the U.S. ties reconstruction aid to political concessions and Kyiv still defends the idea of maintaining sovereignty without European military guarantees, will it be possible for Kyiv to even have any moves ahead of it?
I'm sorry.
We are not going. We are not going by into empty promises.
Yes.
I think because as soon as we don't see any reliable, supported by real resources plan of Ukrainian renovation, I think Ukrainian leadership will be very careful with additional compromises. And if we talk about Ukrainian sovereignty, I think that the basic principle that should be applied and should be reminded from time to time that Russia is an aggressor. And Russia attacked Ukraine, not Ukraine attacked Russia. And that any kind of measures that look like punishment, like restriction on the strength of the armed forces or restrictions on foreign or internal policy decisions, should not be imposed on the victims of aggression, even in exchange of like billions of dollars, which again, now they sound like empty promises.
Mr. Jeffy, China and Russia are staging joint drills while the Europeans are meeting in Paris. Can the U.S. strategy based on the idea of America first still shape a stable post-war order?
The key word there is stable, and the answer is no. As long as America is looking to not exert influence in order to stand for justice and what is right, and we've had our share of violating that in the past, everyone knows. But unless we're willing to exert influence to stand up for something that is right, standing up merely for America first is not going to increase influence around the world. It's going to continue to decrease influence. America first is really America withdrawing, America only, America in isolation. America first is not about putting America first. It's about looking inward, and that is not a recipe for doing what's right. It's not a recipe for gaining or keeping what respect that we still have. It's not a recipe for having influence or stability. It's a recipe. It is giving a green light to the dictatorships in Russia and China and North Korea to be able to run roughshod over others who are democratic countries in this world. It's just crazy. I want to second what my colleague said. It is absolutely absurd that the United States has turned its back on an ally in Ukraine and on a democracy, while it has been, yes, the victim of abuse, the victim of the invasion by Russia. It is absolutely insanity and shame on the Republican Party of the United States. I hope that history shows the Republican Party as acquiescing to autocratic forces around the world because it was kissing the president behind.
Mr. Melanik, let's try to get this question in as fast as possible because we're out of time. Now, Europe is talking about unity, but defense spending gaps remain wide. Can the coalition deliver weapons fast enough to match Russia's battlefield momentum?
We shouldn't talk about like numbers of weapons. What Europe's advantage is the technological advantage, and other instruments they can use, like sanctions, and not just announcing new sanctions, but enforcing these sanctions and supporting Ukraine, because Ukraine can do the job. And Ukraine, 60% of the weapons that now Ukraine use on the battlefield are made in Ukraine. And 80% of the Russian casualties are because of Ukrainians use different kind of drones. And this is what we can balance the Russian numerical advantage. And I think that Europe, together with Ukraine, can succeed.
Okay, that was Mr. Oleksiy Melanek, a former Deputy Defense Minister of Ukraine, and Mr. Denis Jeffy, a strategic affairs expert. Thank you both for your insights and thank you for joining us here. As Paris rallies its coalition, Europe stands at the crossroads. Will it forge genuine strategic autonomy or merely manage decline in America's retreat? The fate of Ukraine may decide the shape of post-Western world. And this brings us to the end of today's episode of Think Tank. I'm Moisi. Thank you for watching.